The stillness, the composure, the captivating uniqueness. You don't have to be showy, loud and obvious to attract attention. Sometimes quiet confidence, an air of mystery, a glimpse of your tantalizing hidden treasures makes you beautifully compelling. Welcome to a captivating Springwatch.
Hello and welcome to the very last of our season of Springwatch programmes in 2022, coming to you live from Wild Ken Hill in the west. It's the last
Are you lost?
I'm lost. I'm lost. In the northeast of Norfolk. Now, we've been trying to bring you the very best of British wildlife throughout the course of our series. I hope we've satisfied you to some extent, and also show you how nature can be part of a natural health system that we can access as well. Tonight, we're going to finish off with, well, we're going to sign off with those baby badgers. We showed you them being born for perhaps the first time underground in Kate McRae's set. That was sensational. And, of course, we're going to take a look at all of our live nests that we have here at Wild Ken Hill. But before we do, hey, look at this.
I can't see you, Chris. You're too camouflaged.
Perfectly the right colour. I mean, I'm going to the same party as this field. It doesn't often happen, but you know, I'm wearing bright orange and I'm camouflaged.
Is that going to be the after-show party, the Poppies and Chris?
Oh, I'm rather pleased with my decor tonight.
It's very bright. Listen, we left you with a bit of a shocker at the end of last night's programme because we started with cute stoats playing and we ended with a stoat being brought in as prey to the buzzard's nest. I know, it was a bit of a shocker. We didn't really have time to unpack that. So let me show you what happened at about 2 minutes to 9. So this is the buzzard's nest, and the adult flew in with something in its talons. And as it put it down in the nest to feed the chicks, we could clearly see that it was indeed a young stoat. Now, this is really interesting because the proportion of mustelids in a buzzard's diet is very low. And according to studies, only about 0.8% of avian predators' diets are mustelids. And if you think about it, you know, stoats are fast, they're fierce predators, they often avoid predation by speed, but also sometimes by that black tip on the end of their tail. So they use the black tip to distract a predator, and so the predator will go for the tail instead of the body of the stoat, and then it will escape predation. But clearly, with this stoat, it got distracted itself and got predated, and sadly ended up as dinner in our buzzard's nest.
You know what that is? That's an example of asymmetrical intra-guild predation. What do I mean by that? Well, the intra-guild predation is where you've got two predators that occasionally kill one another because they're competing for the same resource. And here you've got buzzards, predators of small mammals and rodents. Stoats, predators of small mammals and rodents. And yet here, the buzzard has killed the stoat. The thing is that whilst that might happen very occasionally, it's highly unlikely that the stoat ever kills the buzzard, hence the asymmetrical intra-guild predation. Now, in some species, this really pays an advantage because you're actually taking out the competition. You know, you're leaving more of those rodents and rabbits for yourself to eat. Here, I think it was probably just an unfortunate accident for the stoat and a happy occurrence for the buzzards.
Well, I do also think it looked like it was a young stoat, so maybe, you know, we saw at the beginning they get so distracted playing, so maybe it was distracted playing. But let's have a look at that nest live now. It's probably the last time we'll see it for this season of Springwatch. And there we go, we've got them doing very well on their varied diet, which has now included stoats. They're 33 days old, and they should be fledging about early July. That's if they don't fall out of that very small nest first, because we have seen that they're cramped in there, they're moving around quite a lot. But I have to say, as the days go by, obviously their wings are getting stronger. If they did fall out, they could possibly scramble back in. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that all 3 of those buzzards will successfully fledge in July.
OK, that nest, in a word.
Messy.
fetid.
You wouldn't want to be in
Fetid.
there.
Lots of prey left there. They haven't been taking the prey out like our marsh harriers have, and the consequence is loads of flies. Why don't we take a look at the other nests, though, not so fetid. Some of the nests that we've still got our cameras on. You can see the swallows in the centre there, those youngsters busily preening. Are we going to go to them? I don't think so. What about the heron standing up whilst the youngsters beneath it? I don't think so. What about the one in the bottom left, the nightjar, not doing very much? Let's go to the nightjar. Come on. Oh, so beautiful, so still.
Oh, I see a fly.
Sensational.
I do see a fly.
Sensational, hold on. Now, when we left them last night, you'll know that the eggs had hatched and we had 2 young nightjars there. As it got dark, what we were hoping for happened. The male drops in. You can see a flash of white in his tail there. He moves over after a little bit of showing off, settles down, and soon the chicks are begging. And then look, we've saved it till right at the end, but surely another televisual highlight. Nightjars regurgitating insects into the mouths of their young. So good. Both of them begging, and he'll be feeding them a mixture of flying insects, moths, beetles, flies. And we see the whole process again. Here the female is hopping back onto that nest. She's been out and about now, feeding. She comes in and delivers that food to the youngster. This morning, sun comes up. You can just see the beak of one of the youngsters there peeping out from underneath her. We didn't catch much of a view of them until a little later on in the morning. We saw this. She moves to one side and only one of the youngsters is moving. The other is still, and I'm afraid to say, it's died. Now, we're at a loss to explain why. It couldn't have been starvation. They would have hatched from the egg with a yolk sac remaining in their body to get them through the first 24 hours. We did see them being fed as well. It's not exposure. It wasn't that cold last night, and it certainly wasn't that hot this morning. So we don't know why that one's died. She moves off during the heat of the day. She got so hot, she was gula fluttering all the time. Here she finds some shade and she goes back to cover that youngster a little later. So a bit of a mystery as to why one of them's died, but at least one of them is left there, and as you can see, it seems at this point to be healthy, and it's creeping back beneath her breast. Well, we were talking there about them feeding. They do feed them on a diet of insects that they catch in flight, and they catch them using their enormous gape. Now, take a look at this. Here is a photograph of a nightjar yawning, but when it's hunting, it's going to be opening its mouth that wide as well.
And I just happen to have a prop here of the head of a nightjar with that enormous gape. And they used to think that they would catch their prey by flying around at night with their mouths wide open, trawling for insects, so hoping to get as many insects in their mouths as possible.
I don't favour that.
No, it's not a very good use of energy, is it? It's not very efficient.
No, you're going to be spending a lot of energy flying, you know, just with your mouth open. That's not going to be very pleasant, just to catch a few gnats.
You're not going to want to do that, are
No.
you? So the other method is hawking. So they go from below and they see the silhouette of an insect against the night sky, and then they use those rictal bristles to sense any last-minute movement, just like a cat with whiskers, and that's it, they've got their prey.
You've crumpled my moth.
Well, that's exactly what they want to do, feed it to the young.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you see, they've got these very large eyes, suggesting again that they're visually hunting their predators. So you would imagine that on lighter nights, they might be more active. And what we see, in fact, is that there is an increase in nightjar foraging behaviour when there is a full moon or near to it. And this was a lovely strawberry moon that we saw a few nights ago here at Wild Ken Hill.
It is such an impressive gape, that, isn't it? How many biscuits would you get in there? How many digestives in that? Quite a few. Anyway, that's the excitement of our nests here at Wild Ken Hill, but there's been lots of local excitement about a bird that is very rare to see here, and it is the European bee eater. This is what it looks like. I mean, come on.
It's a polar opposite of a nightjar, isn't it?
I mean, it really is. Exquisite colours. Should be breeding in warmer climates of southern Europe, and often you'll hear it before you see it. I mean, I say often, they are extremely rare to see here. But the very exciting news is not only have they been seen, but they've been seen to be nesting. And this has been verified by the RSPB, and they give us an update. They've been seen excavating nest sites locally in a small quarry near Cromer. So it's highly likely that they might start breeding, and that's the first time in Norfolk, so people are super excited about this. BTO have got records of sporadic breeding. 2017, 3 pairs in Nottinghamshire, none fledged. The last successful fledge was 1 chick, 2015 in Cumbria. So as I say, this is really exciting news, and I'm sure birders will be extremely keen to get down to see those bee eaters, which you can do. They've set up a platform. You're not going, you've got to stay. They've set up a platform, and they've got volunteers that are keeping an eye on them, making sure they're okay. And so if you want to go, do it through the RSPB, and all the details of how to do it, where to go, what to do are on our website. Check it out.
And if you do go and you are a photographer, please behave yourselves. We don't want them to be scared away, of course. Now, rare bird turning up of its own accord there and breeding in the UK, which is very exciting. But what about another one that's being reintroduced to the south of England? Megan, up in the northeast of England, is very excited about that. I know, it's one of her favourites. I'm talking about the Poole Harbour ospreys.
Yes, Chris, it's not only the Poole Harbour ospreys, but it's my girl, it's CJ7. And if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we showed you CJ7 nests down in Dorset. And what we saw was the first signs of osprey breeding in the south of England for over 200 years, as we saw CJ7 delicately put an eggshell out of the nest. But this is the site today. 2 young chicks, about 2 years old, the first of their kind in southern England for over 200 years. And that's the male there, 022, who's doing his due diligence, and both parents are doing fantastic at rearing the 2 chicks. What brilliant work that is. Now, I've come down to Ouseburn, which is one of the most vibrant parts of Newcastle. It's full of so many artists, so many musicians, so many bards, and it's really a fantastic place for culture. But the other day, I got up early because as the gigs were coming to an end, I was getting up to hear a natural playlist of my own with Kane Scrimger.
Welcome to the Ouseburn.
Thank you very much. It's just so, yeah, with the headphones on, because I've never worn headphones with the parabolic before.
Right, yeah.
So it's quite overwhelming just how beautiful it is.
Yeah, because we really get stuck in like 10 times more so we can see the depths of this habitat. So we've got the road in the background there, but everything in between, we've got all this shrubbery and we've got all the birds singing in between, but we can pick out individual artists in this Stone Chorus Orchestra.
Have you noticed any change in the habitat and the birdsong as the years have gone by?
Yeah, so it's really interesting in the Ouseburn. If you look and compare it to other Newcastle parks, there's a lot of scrub in here. So we've got these lovely big patches of bramble and elder, and that's the reason why all these birds are here, because they like these messy edges, as you know.
You use a key word there, messy, because we have to readjust what our thoughts on messy is and should be, because this might look a bit untidy and unkept. It's not your pristine lawn,
Yeah.
but it's not a monoculture.
And I don't know why we've branded it as messy. How many bees and pollinators will be on there, and then how much bird song we had today.
Yeah.
It's just sort of rebranding messy, isn't it, into a new concept.
So what are you picking out at the moment?
We've got wrens. There's a lot of wrens down here, but we've got song thrush and blackbird, robin. There's a chaffinch in there as well.
As the morning progresses, the songs change. The pigeons have really kicked off.
They have, yeah, haven't they? And then wrens are still battling through.
Yeah, well, wrens are little machine guns, really.
They are, yeah.
Quite repetitive trills.
They do dominate everything, though, don't they?
Me, though, I always really enjoy what people would describe as the more simpler species because they're more common. You know, the blackbird. I can spend hours just sat watching blackbirds.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a rich song, isn't it? But like another thing that it doesn't go with the scenery, does it? It's not hard-edged. It's not like them blunt lines. It's this lovely sort of rounded, fluty tones, isn't it?
It's something really interesting when you've got this kind of real urban landscape, but it's just intertwined with kind of the natural world. I mean, it's all the natural world. The urban landscape is the natural world. We're natural, we're part of it. But it's really nice when birdsong and wildlife is incorporated within our day-to-day lives.
Because that's what it should be, shouldn't it? We shouldn't have to go to nature reserves. We should be able to step out our door and experience wildlife straight away.
Yeah, which is what you can do here.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is great. It was so fantastic to meet Kane. He's so passionate, so knowledgeable and enthusiastic about the Dawn Chorus and about the wildlife here around Newcastle. He really is a brilliant, brilliant guy. But of course, the birds in the cities have to compensate a little bit for the noise pollution that goes on, which we produce. And we see different results happening across different species. For example, great tits often have to produce their song at a higher frequency to stand out against the low frequency humming and buzzing of the cities, whereas robins are actually recorded singing through the night to get their songs out there to impress their mates. Really interesting. We don't see this so much in the countryside, but we certainly do in the cities. But wherever you're walking, if you find a green space in a city, just stop, take a minute, sit down, relax and enjoy the bird song, because it really is worth getting up for and worth sitting back and enjoying. It really has that restorative power, doesn't it? But of course, I'm not the only one that thinks that. Now, it's time to head over to a man who absolutely knows the restorative power on nature. Derry Roberts, is a fantastic ambassador and a fantastic, knowledgeable human being about all the rivers and water systems around Wales. And he's got special permission to visit a triple SI site, the River Wye, to figure out what goes on below the waterside.
This part of the River Wye is very special to me. I'm literally in my element.
I've had a few funny looks over the years. A few people sort of take steps backwards and think, oh my word, what's going on here?
Snorkeling gives me an insight into this magical underwater world.
When you go under the water, you do see a lot more than a lot of people think. I have a massive passion for rivers. As far back as I can remember as a child growing up, I just remember going into river, wellies and so on. I just love being in them, the sounds of them, the way they move, the wildlife associated with them. I explore rivers all year round, and spring is obviously a very exciting time because life is just bursting. You see mayflies coming out of the water. You'll see them laying eggs. The classic view of a mayfly is that they only live for a day. It's not true, because most of their lives they spend underwater as larvae. Mayflies have been around for millions of years. They are some of the oldest insects on the planet. It's a lovely thought as well, isn't it, that these creatures have been around and landing on dinosaurs. You look at fossils of most groups of insects that are in fresh water, and they've hardly changed, which just shows you how perfectly adapted they are to life in running water. Another group I've been filming recently, and something again I'm in awe of, something called the non-biting midges. Not well known, it's fair to say, but they are here in their thousands. There's 500 and more species in Britain alone of these non-biting midges. Tanitarsis, the particular group are called, build tubes out of silk and little bits of sediment, and they have capture nets at the top. Bits will drift down along with the current and then get snagged in this gluey kind of silk at the top. They'll then come out of the tube and collect it. They're unsung heroes, creatures like that. Dippers will eat them. Fish such as trout and so on depend on them. It adds to the rich complexity and beauty of the web of life in rivers. Somebody said to me recently I should have been born with fins. I suppose I could call myself semi-aquatic. I'd like to be fully aquatic. One of the most remarkable groups of creatures I see are caddisflies. Lots of the ones you see in rivers are the ones that build cases, as some build cases out of stones, plant material. These little tiny creatures, no longer than your fingernail, they have protection. And I think, oh yeah, I could have that, because I suffer with mental health now and again. If I'm struggling with something, and I have had a few issues, if I'm honest, over the years, sometimes I imagine myself as a caddis having some kind of protection against day-to-day things. In terms of well-being, I feel completely content every time I'm by a river. Even though I'm out every day for hours, quite often I'm seeing something and I literally haven't seen it before. And that's something pretty special.
Dewi Roberts, he's a lovely bloke, Dewi, and a fantastic underwater cameraman as well. Da iawn, Dewi. Well done, boy. Now, throughout this series, we've been following the nest of a white-tailed eagle, and the nest is on Cairngorm Partnership land up in the Cairngorms National Park. The RSPB has put a camera on that nest, but before we catch up, let's have a quick recap. Let's go back to early April, and on the 11th of April, they laid 2 eggs, and on the 11th of April, the second egg hatched. Hatched in the morning, and by the afternoon, the chick had dried out, and the adults were in attendance, just feeding the youngsters. And by the 25th of April, they'd grown quite a bit, and for such big birds, they are very, very good parents. They tear the meat up, and at 8th of May, look at the difference now. They're probably about 12, 13 times heavier than they were when they hatched out at that point. Big difference. And look at the adult. It's probably come to have a look at the lens, seeing itself, its reflection in the lens. Look at the mess on that nest. All that prey remains on there. Now then, it's not just size that changes. Obviously, there's a big, big difference, but it's the feathering as well. Let's go back to early May and have a look at the chicks at that time. You'll see at this point, largely covered in down, a few feathers coming out into pin there, a few brown feathers. You see the down isn't white, it's grey-brown, but still keeping those chicks warm. They'll still be quite vulnerable, so being brooded by the parent as well. And then by the 17th of May, there's a big difference. A lot of the down has gone and the feathers are pushing through. And note how the nearest chick is preening. And at this time, they do a lot of that because the down has become an irritation. Is very itchy and they want to get rid of it, and you can tell if a nest is occupied often just because of the amount of down in and around that nest. And later on, of course, they've grown again. They're both still preening away. They'll spend a lot of time preening, and then by the end of May, the 31st of May, just look at the size. They've grown so much. The primaries have pushed out, the tail feathers are pushing through. Virtually no down left now except on the neck. So they're doing well, and the sign that we've got 2 well-grown, very healthy-looking youngsters is a good sign. It's a healthy environment. There's lots of food there. That was the end of May. So what's happened since then? Well, let's catch up. Here we are in June. This is on the 7th of June, and you'll see the one of the chicks has been fitted with a satellite tag. Well, that was on the 2nd of June, and the chicks were weighed and measured and found to be a remarkable 7 kilograms. That's 2 kilograms heavier than the average adult. Reckon they're both females, and they will lose some of that weight as they get closer to fledging and after they've fledged as well, when they're exercising. And this now is just 2 days ago, fully grown here and exercising. See, they've both been ringed and exercising in and around that nest. And of course, they've got to do this. They need to get strong flight feathers. The wings need to be strong enough for them to launch off on their maiden flight. And bear in mind that that wingspan can be about 7'4", 7'5", so they're huge, huge birds. And those chicks there now, they're roughly about 10 days from fledging from that nest. Of course, the exciting thing is that one of them is fitted with that satellite tag, and we will be able to follow that. And if it lives through its first winter, if it avoids persecution, then who knows, in 5 or 6 years' time, when it's sexually mature, we may well see that bird pair up and breed for the first time. That really would be very exciting. Now, I'm going to be back with more eagles later on, but for now, let's pop back down to Norfolk and Chris and Michaela.
Good to see Yolo celebrating his eagles up there on the west coast of Scotland. They're also breeding on the east coast of Scotland. But I'm very pleased to say that thanks to a reintroduction programme on the Isle of Wight, within a couple of years, just like the ospreys that we're seeing that have returned to Poole Harbour, there could be a chance that these magnificent birds would also be breeding in the south of England. What about that?
It'd be absolutely amazing. OK, let's catch up with our family of badgers. Now, this is the family of badgers that Kate McRae filmed in an artificial set that she put cameras in, and these are the family of badgers that gave us a Springwatch first. Here's a little reminder. This is the first time that we have seen badgers give birth underground. And in fact, this is the first time we've seen this development of badgers from birth to first few weeks, because it's the sort of thing you'd never normally see. I mean, look at that. They don't do that above ground, not when they're that little. They stay underground. This mother was fantastic. She was fiercely protective of those cubs, would not let that intruder come into the set. She then, at 10 weeks old, led them out for the very first time. And that's where we left them last.
Yes, but we are pleased to say that we managed to keep up with those badgers. She would have taken them out of the set and integrated them into that social group. And to do that, it would have been about sharing scents, no doubt some anal rubbing that we've seen so many of our badgers doing over the course of the years. So at 12 weeks, she had a feeding station set in the woods, and we saw this. So here's Peggy on the right-hand side. You can see the smooth coat there. And on the left-hand side, slightly smaller, and with its fuzzy coat still, is one of the cubs. It's a lovely view. Nice to see them together at that feeding station. Not the only animals that were taking advantage of the food, though, because on another occasion, Kate spotted this, a triumvirate of species. So the lazy badger laying down, the muntjac has come in for a nibble, and there in the background, the rather more cautious fox taking advantage of this feeding station. It's a good sign that if you do put a feeding station out for animals and you put a trip camera on it, you never know what you're going to get. But getting 3 different species together at the same time is a real treat, of course.
And Kate sent us an update this morning of what they were doing last night, and they really have grown. Have a look at them now. I mean, this is up to date. They're 5 months old, and look at that. I mean, you can't tell which ones the cubs are and which one the parent is. I mean, they're practically the same size. I would say the parent's on the right-hand side.
Correct.
The mum.
Yeah.
Peggy's on the right, and the 2 cubs are on the left, foraging away. So fantastic to see them.
OK, I suppose I have to ask you, they're 17 weeks old.
Yep,
and given that we've measured the growth of the badgers from the very point that they popped out of the womb, by comparing them to citrus fruits, what are they at 17 weeks old?
Okay, it's this. I know it's not citrus fruit, it's a watermelon. That's how much they weigh, 5 kilograms. Yeah,
but that's
watermelon.
quite heavy, isn't
They've
it?
gone from a tangerine to a watermelon. Amazing, eh?
The only thing is that's not a fruit.
It's in my fruit bowl.
No,
I'm telling
it's
you.
not a fruit. You know,
What is it
some
then?
people might call it a vegetable, but in fact it's a berry, it's not a fruit.
Are you sure about that?
I'm pretty certain about that, in fact.
Every
yeah.
day's a school day with Chris Packham.
I really am. Now, we are celebrating the wildlife of the UK here constantly, but we've got to remember that we are one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. And some of the things that we're missing disappeared a long time ago. Bear, wolf and lynx. Now, we talk about reintroducing these, of course. We're a bit cautious when it comes to those. Not as much progress being made with lynx as we might like. Beavers making more progress, and that's really exciting because they're ecosystem engineers. They shape the entire environment. But there is another species out there, another ecosystem engineer that was extinct, that has come back, that's doing a brilliant job of it, the wild boar. And here is how it does it.
Early spring is a time of transition. At this time of year, the forest floor comes to life. And one forest resident is on hand to help this revival. At just a few weeks old, these wild boar piglets may be having more of an impact on their woodland home than they know. As they innocently disturb the ground beneath their feet, they open it up to new life. After a couple of weeks suckling exclusively on their mother's rich milk, these piglets will begin to discover the banquet on offer underfoot. The sow is in search of succulent tubers and roots. She has an exceptional sense of smell, able to detect food like truffles buried as deep as 3 meters underground. And there's a reason she's so nasally gifted. This early in the season, whilst she awaits the full splendour of spring, this skill is hugely important. Much like we use our dexterous hands, the boar use their snouts, touching and investigating anything unfamiliar as they explore the forest floor. This helpful appendage comes fully reinforced with extra bone and cartilage, so they can bulldoze through the soil with ease. As they rootle around, the boar uncovers all manner of invertebrates hiding in the earth, providing a welcome snack for hungry songbirds. Their rummaging also removes dominant plants and clears the way for a richer variety of species to grow. Like forest gardeners, they break up the sod so the seeds of wildflowers, shrubs and trees are given space to germinate. And in early spring, this groundwork helps the forest floor burst back into life. Even their play serves this ecosystem. Boar disperse seeds in their droppings. Their trampling hooves act to suppress dominant plants, which in turn clears space for more inferior species to take root. Eventually, the boar are ready to move on. Quietness descends as they depart into the distance, while an opportunistic wren appears to take advantage of their burrowing bounty. the boar, unknowingly, have left quite an impact in their wake. I do like wild boars, I've got to be honest. I've seen them in the Forest of Dean. Fantastic animals, they really are. Welcome back to Eagle Island, to a very stormy and a very windy Eagle Island. No problem to the eagles at all, this of course. And throughout this week we've been following a family of golden eagles up on the Mull coast. Our cameraman Jim has been firmly ensconced in his hide, so let's go and have a look and see what he's had over the last couple of days. This is the nest, both adults coming in, one of them bringing in prey there. They've been bringing in prey regularly, really good parents. Looks like a small songbird, I think, in this instance, trying to eat that. And of course, at this point, it can feed itself. It's roughly around 6 weeks old by now. You can see just a bit of down around the head and around the neck there, tearing the prey up. But every now and again, the adults bring in a much bigger item of prey. It'll be a rabbit or a hare, I would imagine. And when they do that, they've got to tear it up. The chick can't handle that, so they tear it up into more manageable chunks and then feed it gently to the chick in there. And it's doing well, it's growing really well. You see it's got a huge crop there, and that means that it's being very, very well fed. Now, earlier this week, if you remember, we saw one of the adults bringing in a kestrel chick to the nest. Now, this was quite a young chick, covered in down, and the youngster tried to eat it whole. Just couldn't quite get it down, legs hanging out. They see the talons, so I had to put it back down and try all over again. Now, this is fascinating because just the other day, Jim filmed this. It's one of the adult golden eagles flying right next to its nest and being mobbed by a kestrel. Huge difference in size there, but they're feisty little things, those kestrels. It's not giving up, and that indicates to me that there's a nest somewhere nearby. And we spoke to local naturalist Ewan Miles, and he confirmed that yes, there is a kestrel nest about 300 metres from that eagle nest. So one of the chick came from there. But it's not just kestrels. White-tailed eagle has been flying past, and this is a bigger threat to that chick. So the adult golden eagle, a little bit of interaction, just escorted it out of the way, really. Made sure that it wasn't going anywhere near that nest. And there's a bit of a myth here on Mull, and elsewhere in parts of Scotland as well, that since the white-tailed eagles have increased here, they've chased the golden eagles away. But it's simply not true. 30 years ago here on Mull, they had roughly 30 pairs of golden eagles when there were just a handful of white-tailed eagles, and now we've still got 30 pairs of golden eagles. And there are several places on the island where white-tailed eagles and golden eagles are nesting just about 1 kilometre apart. White-tailed eagles, of course, they became extinct here in the UK in 2018. But the golden eagle never did. Now, why is that? Well, there are two big differences here. First of all, the golden eagle, it does not like people. It tends to shy away and nest in the more isolated cliffs. And secondly, if you get a big dead animal on the hill, you'll sometimes get 2, 3, 4 white-tailed eagles on there. Golden eagles don't do that. They don't scavenge quite as readily as the white-tailed eagles. One thing we have seen our pair of golden eagles doing is carrying greenery, green branches back to that nest. Now, Chris discussed this in Norfolk with the buzzards just the other day. And of course, some of them, the rowan leaves, for example, have antibacterial properties. But mainly it's to cover the nest. You think of all the feces and all the dead prey, dead and rotting prey in there. Well, if they carry on building up and building up and building up, it's like putting a thick Axminster carpet over all of that. And they're bringing in stuff to bulk out that nest as well, of course. Now that chick, well, do you know what? That chick should fledge. It's 6 weeks old now, so it should fledge in about 4 weeks. And if I make it that long in this storm, unfortunately, I have to fledge away from Mull as well. So big thank you to everyone, the people of Mull, the wildlife of Mull. You've all been absolutely fantastic. I'm going to go and hold on to a tree now while I hand you back down to Megan in the northeast. Take it away, Megs, quick!
Oh, Yolo, I hope you anchor yourself down. We can't have you blowing away anytime soon. Now, yesterday, of course, I was talking about the importance of pollinators and creating corridors. But in those corridors, it's really important that we have a diversity, a variety of flowers and a variety of different pollen. Now, you might be asking why I'm in a bee suit. Behind me here, you can see 2 honeybee hives. Now, these are being studied by Northumbria University to look at how bees use pollen. Now, of course, honeybees are a managed species, but they can be really good as models scientifically to understand how our pollinators use the plants within our cities to gather that nectar that they need throughout the season. Now, I'm really pleased that I'm joined today by Beatrice Dale, known as Bee herself, who's currently doing a PhD project with the honeybees. Hi, Bee.
Hiya.
How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. So tell me a little bit about your project.
Yeah, so I'm trying to look at how important trees are for different pollinators in urban areas. So one of the ways I'm doing this is by collecting pollen pellets, which are just the little packed together pollen that honeybees bring back to their hive, and then I can analyse it to see what they've been foraging on.
Right, okay, that sounds really interesting. So we have a couple hives over here. These are your study hives?
Yeah.
Okay, should we see if there's any pollen in there?
Yeah, sure.
It's great, isn't it? You can see them all buzzing around, but obviously it's quite late in the evening, so they're starting to hunker away for the night. Oh, look at that, there's some bits of pollen down here.
Yeah.
Have we got, there's quite a few, have you got any more?
Yeah, let me just grab.
Because I suppose they've been quite inactive at this time of the day.
So this is a sample that I took from the hive last week, but just more on a sunny day,
right.
And more in the daytime. So there's loads of different colours, and that associates with which species of plant they're foraging from.
So how exactly do we get the pollen? Because these traps are really interesting, but I suppose left on the side of the honeybee hive for how long?
So we put it on the hive for about an hour, and it's just a little like mesh of holes, and it goes over the entrance of the hive, and the holes are just big enough for a honeybee to fit through, but not quite big enough for a honeybee with a pollen pellet. So it just knocks off about 25% of the pollen pellets they're trying to bring back to the
Only
hive.
25%?
Yeah, so they've got plenty to eat.
Okay, and they can go back out, and then it's only on for an hour or so. But it is interesting because you've got all those different colours there. You've got the burnt orange and the green and kind of the mustard ones, which I'm assuming mean different plant types.
Yeah, so this is one of the things that we're trying to look at.
Yeah.
So a team at Northumbria last year started creating this method where you can scan a pollen pellet with an app on your phone, and it gives it a specific colour code. And then you can look at the ID of the plant species that this pollen came from.
That's amazing.
And then hopefully honeybee keepers everywhere could scan their pollen pellets and look at the colour chart and see what their honeybees have been foraging.
And help contribute to your citizen science, which is excellent. And I love this here because you've got the darker ones, which is obviously the rose family, and going down to the bramble. So it's really interesting to see what they've been out foraging on in the city.
Yeah.
That's really lovely. Well, thank you so much, Bea. I hope the rest of your project goes really well. I can't wait to see the results. It's really cool, isn't it? Who'd have thought all that diversity of pollen that the honeybees go out to collect and enjoy? But when you look at pollen under a microscope, that's when things get really quite cool. Have a look at this. This is a bit alien, and we've enhanced the colours here a little bit to make it really stand out. But you just see the types of shapes and the colours. Really is quite remarkable, everything that you can see. Really cool stuff. Now, the University of Reading very kindly lent me these. Let me get them out of my pockets. These are 3D pollen balls. Now what you'll notice is that they are very different in shape and texture. So this one is from a birch tree, whereas this one is from a dandelion. Now under the microscope they would be about the same size, which I personally found quite surprising, but the textures of them is where they really stand out. The birch tree as a wind disperser can have a smooth outer edge because it just needs to float away on the wind, whereas the dandelion wants to get caught in something's fur so it can disperse off to another area of habitat. But who'd have thought pollen with different shapes and textures like that? Really fascinating. Now, the University of Bristol have been going through some of the initial results, and what they found is that in some areas, in urban areas, it's actually faring better than some rural areas. So our pollinators aren't necessarily more abundant in our cities, but they are certainly in some places more biodiverse. Well, why is that? Well, because we've got so many different types of plants and nectar and pollen for them to be using and utilising rising to their best abilities. So what we're finding is very much differences between cities and urban, but lots more results to come. Now I have to thank everyone who's helped me along my road trip, from those down in Kilda to Hawksey Nature Reserve, and the community in Newcastle that has just been so welcoming. It's just been the most amazing experience getting to know the wildlife that's here. But of course, we couldn't leave you without one last mindfulness moment. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the glory of the Highlands.
What a gorgeous mindful moment, especially that lovely sunset at the end. Don't forget to keep going with your mindful moments. Every time you go out, just stop, take 90 seconds, take a deep breath, breathe it all in, the sights and sounds and beauty of nature. No, you can't do it now. We haven't got time. Come on, keep
sadly
going.
not. Sadly not now. OK, we've had quite a cast of characters this year for Springwatch 2020, so we thought we'd put together a Class of 2022 yearbook. Let's see who are the top pupils this year, shall we? Well, we open on page 1, and who have we got? Oh, we open on page 1, and we've got here our Marsh Harriers. Well, have they been the perfect pupils? I'm not entirely sure, to be quite honest with you. There's been a bit of bickering in the nest, but look, they're all doing well at this point. Some down, left on the tops of the heads of the younger birds, but look at the one on the left there, the biggest of all of them. The cinnamon crown is coming through, and we're beginning to see that juvenile plumage that they'll leave the nest with. The adults are bringing in loads of different food here. Lots of birds, particularly water birds we've seen, but outside of the fighting they've been doing very well indeed. We ought to take one last live look at those marsh
Say goodbye
harriers.
to them live.
What are they up to now? I bet they're just resting after a day. Oh no, they're up
look
and
at them.
about. Look at that.
You really see that, those sort of auburn feathers on its head. Look, that one in particular.
I know.
Look
That's
at
gonna. Yeah, I mean.
And did
it's
you
not-
see that? The jumping, the sort of flying. It looks like it's almost trying to fly. It did
Well,
quite a good little jump there.
It's going to be another couple of weeks, isn't it? But look, they're gazing skyward, dreaming of soaring in the Norfolk sky. Lovely.
OK, you know, if I'm a teacher, you're always going to have a favourite, aren't you?
OK,
and
well,
one of my
not the
favourites.
marsh harriers,
yeah,
no.
go on, turn
OK,
it.
swallow.
Oh no, I love the swallows, but no, it's the heron. The heron is teacher's pet. I've absolutely loved this nest. It's just compared to the nest that we were looking at last week with the 3 very noisy chicks. This is so charming. It's just by itself. It's just doing its thing. It's a little gizmo, isn't it? Little gremlin. Being fed little tidbits at times. Other times, I mean, really, that is a massive mouthful. It's like watching a magic act. Magic act as the rat disappears down the gullet. But oh, look at it, Chris. Come on, you've got to admit it's absolutely gorgeous.
Softened a little bit, you know.
It's got character. I can imagine it growing up to be the real character of the...
Character in its own gruesome way. We mustn't forget the small birds, though. What about a last look live at our linnets? We thought they might have been fledging today, but I think they're probably still ensconced in that nest. There they are. They won't fledge now. it's going to be too late in the day. They've settled down for the evening, and if they do hop out into the brambles, as we've seen so many of them do, it's going to be tomorrow morning. Another nest out there on the farmland that's being so well cared for here at Wild Ken Hill are the woodlarks. We'll take a nice live look at those now. There they are, nestled down on the ground. 5 young in that nest. You can see their beaks
that gorgeous nest, by the way, with those
like the
lovely. I
old
like
woodlarks,
that.
don't
Yeah,
you?
no, it's really pretty nest.
And again, these are a bird that, remember, they're not going to fledge in that classical sense. They're not just going to take to the air. They're going to scuttle off into the grass, spread themselves. Look at that.
We ought to say goodbye to our original herons as well.
The original herons, the boisterous herons.
The boisterous ones. That sort of mayhem that they had, that mealtime mayhem with our herons. Oh, well, do you know, I can't tell whether that's the adults or the chicks.
It's an adult.
What do you reckon?
Adult on the right, I think. And
I think you're right.
And a youngster
and
on the
one
left.
chick.
Yeah, the others must have flapped off.
Should we take a quick look actually at the other nest live, the other heron nest live, because we didn't actually say goodbye to my favourite, the little chick there. Oh, can't even see them. But you know, our theme of this programme has been the restorative power of nature. And here at Wild Ken Hill, they really are practising the restorative power of regenerating farming. And they've done it so well, and there have been such amazing benefits. But if you'd like to know more about it, then you can go to our website, because we've teamed up with Open University, and there's lots of information there about how they do restorative farming and regenerative farming, and what benefits it can give. And there's a great interview as well online with Nick Padwick, who's the pioneer of regenerative farming here at Wild Ken Hill. So as I say, go on the website and click on the Open University button, and you'll find out lots more about this amazing farming that has given us so much wealth of wildlife.
Sensational stuff, and we do hope that a few farmers click on that as well and emulate some of the things that are being done here on their farm, so that we can spread that wildlife out away from Wild Ken Hill. It can prosper elsewhere. Let's get back to the yearbook, because we really want to find out
I wonder
who could be pupil of the year, I wonder. Oh, look,
Oh.
5 stars.
Star pupil.
5 stars for the nightjar. What have we seen it up to today? Well, here we are. Look at the tail of the nightjar. Oh, a photo-bombing pygmy shrew. Let's see it again, because it's quite quick. Check the tail. Look, here it comes.
Look at that!
Oh, desperate to get in on the nightjar action. A little pygmy shrew. Sensational stuff there.
Should we have a look at it live? Should we have
Come
a look
on,
at
live nightjar. One
live
last chance.
nightjar.
Come on. It's been the nest of the season. Oh, yes. So beautiful. Sat there serenely in the Norfolk early night.
You know, those are maybe the stars, the class of 2022, but there's always a few pupils that get that certificate for just turning up, don't they? Do you know what I mean? Well done, you turned up, good on you. So let's have a look at a couple of those. Let's have a look at our swallow nest. I say that, I am joking. I actually love the swallow nest. And this nest, I mean, it's just been getting on with it. You know, we've had 2 swallow nests. The first one already fledged. Look at that, Chris.
I know,
I'm changing my mind.
all lined up in eager anticipation of one last late night feed.
Do you know, they're not just going to get the certificate for turning up. They're going to go into our class of 2022, because they are adorable. I've actually really enjoyed watching this nest over the last few days, because they've really gone from being like this sort of cuddly pillow of feathers to these almost adult-looking birds, and it really won't be long before these are fledging.
What about
as well.
okay, another favourite of yours?
Okay, what's that?
They're fluffy and they're normally blocking the camera.
Barn owls.
Let's just go to the barn owls just to see if we can see anything in that barn owl's nest, because there are 5 youngsters in the bow house.
Oh, it's not.
House.
It's looking a bit.
But I'm afraid that. Oh no, there we are. There we are. And look, you can see the heart-shaped disc on that one, and we've seen considerable development, and the feathers coming through as the down's disappearing on that bird on the left-hand side there. And of all of them, these have had a surfeit of food being brought in. We've seen no bickering amongst the youngsters at all, which we've seen in the past, where the little one loses out. They're all doing really, really well, which is nice, isn't it?
Do you know, so often with our barn owls, we've seen one of them, the smallest one, not survive. And we've got 5 of them in there. This has been a really successful year for the barn owls, which is really good news because we didn't see any of them last year on Springwatch.
Well, that's it, I'm afraid. We're coming to the end of this programme and our series. So what about a few highlights? Let's head up to the northeast to Megan, who's going to tell us about hers.
Oh, it's so hard to choose a highlight, isn't it? Because it's been such a fantastic 3 weeks exploring the northeast of England with so much wildlife to be seen and enjoyed. You know, this road trip was all about humans. It was all about locations with people at its heart, but incorporating wildlife into that mission. And I've learnt so much, and I hope you've enjoyed it alongside me too.
Well, this is my 46th visit to Mull in just 31 years, and it's been just as exciting, just as enjoyable as my first visit. It is an incredible island, the landscape, the scenery, and of course the wildlife. And yes, most people come for the iconic species, the eagles, the harriers, the otters. But Mull has so much more to offer, and Mull never ever fails to deliver.
And we've had a fabulous time here at Wild Ken Hill. We've had nuggets of science, we've had a belly full of natural beauty, and we've quenched our thirst of fun. You and I, we've survived predation, so we're going to spread our wings and we're going to fledge from this season of Springwatch. So it leaves me to say a huge thank you to everyone here at Wild Ken Hill for hosting us again. And a big thank you to you for watching and joining in, and please do continue to do so on social media because we love hearing from you and it's a really collaborative sharing platform.
Yeah, if you do see anything whilst you're out and about during the course of the summer, you can load those onto our social media platforms, and do take the time to reconnect with that nature. Allow it to come into your life and make yourself feel better. We'll be back here in the autumn at Wild Ken Hill, so until then, at some point in October or November, it's good night from Michaela and I. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Springwatch 2022 has brought us all the drama, spectacle, and edge of our seats moments that we love about this special season. There's a nightjar flying straight by there, look. Unbelievable. Yes! There's been new life, comedy, tragedy. We've had it all.
Norfolk has put on a sensational show
It's a televisual highlight.
with wildflower meadows bringing a kaleidoscope of colour and breathing life into the landscape.
This season, we've spread our wings, exploring rugged islands teeming with life, and showcasing the very best wildlife that Mull has to offer.
That is a seriously impressive bird.
In the north of England, we've explored rich forests, coastal havens, and bustling urban landscapes. Places that thankfully remain home for the rare, endangered, and elusive.
And it's our mutual love and curiosity of the natural world that brings us all together and helps us along.
But the most special thing about nature is that every single experience we have is unique to us. From what we see to what we hear. And the way that that makes us feel. There is no doubt that nature is extraordinary, and spring encapsulates that at its very best.